Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Katie Valentine. I am the director of DSF Discover. I'm glad you're here. People are tuning in and telling us where they're from. Want to just do a quick sound check, make sure you can hear us. So if someone can type in, yes, we can hear you, that would be great, just to make sure. We have people coming in from Texas and from Black Mountain, North Carolina, Urbandale, Iowa, Ohio, a couple of different places in California. So that's just fantastic. And of course, with me is the person you're all here to hear from and to learn from, Belva. Belva, now I'm going to do exactly the thing I just feared. Belva Brown Jordan.
There we go. There we go.
Okay, great. So people can hear us, and that's great. And hey, the group from Albuquerque, I heard from you guys yesterday. Really glad you're here. It's so fun that you're all gathered together to watch
Wow.
this.
Wow.
Perfect. Well, I think we're just ready to get underway. Belva, are you ready?
I'm ready. I'm ready.
Perfect. All right,
Okay.
let me load up our slides. So welcome to 5 Ways to Engage in Music as a Spiritual Practice in Your Communities. I'm very excited, and Belva has very graciously given us her time. We've been talking about this for months, and every time I've thought about it, I've gotten more and more excited. So you're in for a special treat tonight. And this is sponsored by DSF Discover, which is the online learning community of Disciple Seminary Foundation. So if you have any questions, I am the person to ask. Do feel free to use the chat all during the training. I'll be monitoring that and chiming in to give Belva any questions as she is presenting to us. And of course, let me present Belva to you. Belva is, among many things, the Dean of Disciple Seminary Foundation in Claremont, California. She is the Associate Professor of the Practice of Ministry at Claremont School of Theology, where she just won a teaching award. So congratulations on that again, Belva.
Thank you.
And she is the Associate Dean for Curriculum and Assessment at Claremont School of Theology, and a wonderful singer and musician in addition to all of that. So thank you so much for being here and presenting this to us.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Wonderful. So just a quick note to everyone, this is a wonderful hour to spend. It will be prayerful, it will be exciting, it will be learning, it will be all of the above. So as much as you can, close down your other browsers, give your doggy a treat, come here and be present as much as you can. That's that you can get the very, very most out of this. And I will be here to answer any questions. I'll be in touch with all of you after. So just be as distraction-free as possible on this Tuesday evening. And with that, I will mute myself and just turn it right over to you, Belva.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. I'm so pleased that so many of you have come from so many different places. Let's begin our time by singing. Lord, I want to be a Christian in my heart, in my heart. Lord, I want to be a Christian in my heart, in my heart, in my heart. Lord, I want to be a Christian in my heart. I don't know about you, but singing and music is such an important part of my life. But I wonder if this is you. Your music seems to be in a rut, week after week after week. I happen to have an 8-year-old and a 40-year-old in my household, and so the range of music we listen to is varied. Or maybe this is you. Sometimes you listen and you hum along without thinking deeply about the meaning of the music. I know that I've been singing the hymns out of the Chalice Hymnal for many years, and there are some songs that I just sing by rote or I'll listen to without even giving it any thought as to what the song might mean or what it's about. Or maybe this is you. You'd like to include music more in your own personal spiritual practices, but sometimes it feels like cheating. It's kind of like Singing is a spiritual practice? Really? Well, I'm here to tell you it is. And some of you already know this. Or maybe this is you. You'd like to expand your congregation's experience of music and expand the possibilities of how your congregation participates in music and uses music in worship or other times when you gather. Well, today, this is what we will focus on. There are five ways, so five things that we're going to focus on in this hour, and they will include discovering the joy of spiritual practices. I'm not making the assumption that all of you on this webinar don't engage in spiritual practices, but I want us to talk a little bit about spiritual practices. I want us to review a short list of some spiritual practices or spiritual exercises. We will engage in the spiritual practice of using music. We'll discover ways to engage in the spiritual practice of singing with others. And we will consider some next steps for not just our personal lives, but for our congregational lives as well. So let's move into number one, the discovering the joy of spiritual practices. I don't know about you, but oftentimes my life gets so hectic with so many things coming at me and so many things for me to process and outline, and the list of to-do things can get really long. And so sometimes I need to stop, I need to pause. And spiritual practice, engaging in a spiritual practice is one of those ways that I stop and that I pause and that I regain some of my footing as I am engaged in the various things that come at me. So, spiritual practice is not just about focusing, but it is about an experiential relationship with God or with the sacred or with the divine. It is a way of us connecting with God. There are a number of different ways of thinking about this, and one is using the term ascetical theology is one way of thinking about talking about understanding um, 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 uh, connecting with God and expanding our experiences with God. Now, some of you may be familiar with the word acidic, and it that is kind of the root of acidical theology. And if you're familiar with the word acidic, you may know it as being have strict self denial as a measure of that's a measure of your personal. And especially your spiritual discipline, kind of like a monk or living in a monastery who only is there to pray, or who is in some monasteries they may be there to be the one to do the agricultural work. There are a number of different ways in which one might restrict what they do in order to expand their spiritual practice. But ascetical theology, I'm going to go back to the previous slide, is spiritual practices that deepen our faith. So we don't have to be monks. We don't have to live in a monastery to approach spiritual practices from this perspective. It's a way to focus spiritual practices and various forms of prayer that deepens our relationship with the sacred and with God, which again goes right along with the understanding of spiritual practices being an experiential activity that connects us more deeply with God. And engaging in spiritual exercises or spiritual practices is about enhancing our lived faith experience of our faith. So, the closer you feel like you are, the closer you are to God, or the closer you are to the divine or the sacred, usually the more alive, the deeper your faith, your experience with your faith becomes. The second thing I want to do is I'd like for us to just talk about some spiritual practices and some spiritual exercises. And so I have a list that I'm going to go through and share with you. And while I invite you to listen to the list, it's going to maybe spark some ideas, or there will be a time for you to share some ways in which you engage in spiritual practices or spiritual exercises as well. So, one spiritual practice that I wanted to mention to us today is the prayer of examen. Now, the prayer of examen may also be, some may be familiar with this, because it is a part of Ignatian spirituality. Ignatian was a brother who identified some ways of connecting with the divine, and the prayer of examen is one of those ways that Ignatius introduced to his community. It's a way of being prayerfully reflective of the events that took place over one's day, and you reflect on those events in order to detect God's presence. How was God present with you today? And in that, it's a way of discerning the direction that God wants you to go in your life. Another practice is the spiritual practice of relaxation. Now, I know some people who kind of hesitate to use this practice because they say, well, when I start getting too relaxed, I don't really feel like it's a spiritual practice because I will like fall asleep. So is that really a spiritual practice? Well, it might be, but there are ways to consciously relax one's body. Relax one's mind, relax one's thought processes in order to, again, enhance our experiences with God and the divine. Another spiritual practice is keeping a journal. Now, this is one of those things, and all of these spiritual practices that I mentioned today, I've tried. And some of them I've used for extended period of time, and some of them, like journaling, has not really been my forte. But I do know lots and lots of people who keep a journal. And it's also a way of combining journaling, say, with the prayer of examen, to write down those things, those ways in which you have detected God's presence in your life in the midst of your day. And to write down what you discern about how God is directing your own life. Another spiritual practice is yoga or Pilates, or it may be something a little more vigorous, like my daughter teaches pound, and Zumba. So it's a way of really kind of using one's body in a way of connecting. But yoga and Pilates has come to be known as a way of doing that in a more spiritual way, in a more quiet way, in a way in which one becomes more centered when they think about God's presence in their lives. Reading scripture, reading the Bible can be seen as a spiritual practice. In a few minutes, when I ask you about your own spiritual practice, if you have a go-to scripture in the Bible, I'd like to know and have us share with the group kind of what that is. My go-to scripture is Psalm 139. It is the passage when I feel the least connected to God and to people around me. I go to that passage because it reminds me that there is nowhere that I can go that I'm not in the presence of God. It reminds me that God knows me like nothing, no one, no other, and that God is always with me. It is a passage that enhances and deepens my faith. So when I start doubting and I need to just focus on sometimes I go to the Bible and read, and often I will go to Psalm 139. Another one of my favorite practices is walking the labyrinth. It's a walking meditation, and there are different people who do it differently. This is a picture of a labyrinth, kind of a rough one, but there's some places like Chartres Cathedral in France that has the labyrinth in the floor of the sanctuary of the cathedral. And there are, I think once a month or so, they like clear all of the chairs, and they invite people to come in and do this meditative walk where you are walking toward the center of the labyrinth. Now, there's only one path with a labyrinth. And if the path is a path, if you understand the path to be a path of spiritual connectedness, you walk the path one way all the way to the center. And whatever you are able to gather of the sacred there, that's what, as you walk out, you take with you to go out into the world. So the labyrinth is another way of engaging in a spiritual practice. I'm going to pause for a moment, and if you, what is your spiritual practice? If you want to type in for Katie, and then she'll share some of those practices that you type in, just to get a sense about what some of us do to engage in spiritual practices.
Yes, we'll give everyone a moment to do that. And I know those of you on your mobile devices, it can be a little tricky, but we'll pause just long enough for you to do that. And the group from Albuquerque will need to elect a fast typist. So whoever types the most per minute can let us know. And we heard from one person that they are a yoga practitioner, and someone is a piano player.
Okay.
Wonderful. I'm Belva. I have a tattoo of a labyrinth, so yeah. Labyrinths are one for me.
Yeah,
you're available. We hear meditation, singing, piano is coming in. Yeah. Maybe one or two more. Oh, writing in a journal daily, and yeah, relating to playing the piano too. Oh, I love this. A pray and color group at church.
Oh yeah.
And okay. Yeah, and some intermittent journaling. And oh, I love this. Someone wanted that their favorite, one of the scriptures that they turn to is trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. And all your ways submit to God. God will make your paths straight.
Good.
Yeah, and Lectio daily devotional, silent meditation, music, and labyrinth. So it looks like we have quite a eclectic and practice.
But yeah, thank you all for sharing that with the group. Another spiritual practice of mine is following a rule of life. It comes out of an early church monastery. Well, actually, with Saint Thomas, with the rule of life. And so this is a way of identifying those things in my everyday life that connect me more fully with God. And then, and particularly identifying the ones that I do frequently, like deep belly laughter, or dancing, or like yesterday morning, I had the opportunity to have a quiet walk on the beach next to the ocean. But in addition to that, singing and listening to music are also spiritual practices that I engage in, both in private and with others. Because often music does heal the soul. I've just recently lost a young nephew. He was 45, relatively young. And one of my friends, in offering some words of comfort, said, go listen to some music, because it is a way of both creating a more deeper experience with God as I was seeking comfort. And it is music does heal the soul in a lot of ways. One of the things that I've asked Katie to do is to play a little bit of the songs, Sweet Honey in the Rock song, I Remember, I Believe. And this is a way for us to pause just for a minute, and we'll at least do the chorus to hear how listening to music can also be a spiritual practice. Katie, can you play that for us?
Yes, and once it begins to play, it'll Belva, it will cut off microphone and my microphone.
Okay.
So I'll play through a verse and a chorus.
Yes, that'll be good. Okay.
Perfect. Let me try that one more time. But it was really hard to stop playing it after a chorus.
Yeah. So I know that I see at least Virginia had a hard time hearing it because it was breaking up. But so I'm just going to sing just the chorus, and again invite us to listen one more time. And this is also a way of of connecting with the music of professionals like Sweet Honey and the Rock, which I am not, none of us are, but it does not mean that we can't use that music and let it flow through our own bodies as a way of engaging in the spirit. And listening again is one way of doing that. So Virginia, at least for you, I'm going to sing at least the chorus so that you can hear what others may have been able to hear pretty well. I don't know how my mother walked her troubles down. I don't know how my father stood his ground. I don't know how my people survived slavery. Standing in the rainstorm, I believe. And so I'm singing, hey dum, my lady, hey dum, hey dum, hey dum, a day, hey dum, my lady, hey dum, hey dum day. Hey, 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 dum, my lady. Hey, dum, hey dum day dum day, hey dum a lady, hey dum day. I see that Katie's going to send the link so that even beyond the webinar, you'll be able to hear that music. Um, and just as I see where Rick was responding that he loved the tight harmonies and the pulsating beat. Well, I hear those harmonies in my mind and can feel that pulsation in my body when I take on singing that music or even listening to it as a part of a spiritual practice. Engaging in the spiritual practice by by using music, again, it's just one of those ways to expand our connection with God, but also our connection with one another. And being able to sing together is another way of as we connect with one another. Just as Sweet Honey in the Rock is a really good example of how they have to listen carefully to one another in order to sing the part that they are responsible for singing. They have to be connected as in their singing together. It's the only thing about this webinar that's a little unfortunate is that I can't hear you. Uh, and you can hear me when I sing, but I can't hear you. But I'm going to invite us to sing together. I want Jesus to walk with me. Again, this is a way that some of you may already be doing these kinds of things in your congregations and in the communities where you are. But this is an example of being able to take a song and sing it with others. And so I'm going to sing, I Want Jesus to Walk with Me. I want Jesus to walk with me. All along this tedious journey, I want Jesus to walk with me. If you know it, sing it with me this first time. And if this is a first time that you've heard this, we will sing it through twice so that you can join in. And hopefully you can hear each other. Okay. I want Jesus to walk with me. I want Jesus to walk with me all along this tedious journey. Lord, I want Jesus to walk with me. Join me. I want Jesus to walk with me. I want Jesus to walk with me all along this tedious journey. Lord, I want Jesus to walk with me. Something that's really special about a song like this, where the words and the melody are pretty simple and easy for us to learn and to sing together, that you can change the words to fit kind of what a community may be experiencing around them. And even if you were to find this hymn, it may actually be in the Chalice Hymnal. I don't remember now, but I know that I grew up singing this. Even though I grew up in a disciple congregation, we had a Baptist hymnal, and this was one of those songs that was in there. And but so and we would sing the verses that were in the hymnal, but even beyond that, I mean, another verse in the hymnal is, in my trials, Lord, walk with me. And oh, good, it is in the chalice hymnal. So you can see the different verses there, but sometimes something may be going on in your community and in your congregation or in your life that you want to change the words. And that is like totally okay. I mean, again, it's because, we're not just singing the song just to sing it. We really are singing it in order to deepen our experience with God, with the sacred, with the divine, and with one another. Um, uh, so, um, just want to invite you to take note that, and again, I'm not assuming that you all aren't doing some of these things, but it is one way to encourage us to use music, and particularly singing and singing together as a spiritual practice. Um, And let's look at number 4, our fourth objective, which has to do with discovering ways to engage in the spiritual practice of singing with others. And we just had one example of that. And uh, while one of the things I want to say to this group, even though we're not quite at our at what I will call kind of the words of encouragement. But I'm going to give you some words of encouragement here. And this is something that I'm sure many of you already know, is that you actually have everything you need to make music a spiritual practice, both in your personal life and in the life of your congregation or the community in which you're in. Even if you're not a choir member, even if you're not a trained singer, I'm not a trained singer. It's just one of those things that I cannot not do. Even if you can sing, if you can listen to music, you have everything you need inside of you and within your communities to be able to use music as a spiritual practice and singing as a spiritual practice. It's in your heart, it's in your spirit, it's in your mind, it's in your listening, it's in your being willing to open your mouth and to sing. So you really have everything you need to do that. Um, and so as we think about ways to engage in this spiritual practice of singing with others, there are a few ways that I have identified, and you may think of others. So you can listen to me, but you may also have experiences of doing this by connecting with others. One is to create a music covenant group. Now, I know that we have all kinds of groups that we are a part of, and a music covenant group might be looked at as a group of people that we have created a connection and this sacred promise with, that we're going to listen to music. Maybe the covenant is to listen to new music. Maybe the covenant is to go back and reclaim some particular music that you all have done together before. One of the excuse me, one of the disciplines that I work in is called theomusicology. THEO musicology. It's musicology that is interdisciplinary in many ways. Thanks, Katie, for spelling it there. In many ways, but theomusicology gives weight to and preference to and begins at the place of theology. It's and part of what it says is that all music is sacred. Now, I have a very good friend who would argue that rap music is not sacred, or some other forms of music are not sacred. Theomusicology wants to at least uh, exercise the benefit of the doubt to say that all music is sacred. And so the music covenant group might be a group in which you say, okay, we are going to select rap music by a particular artist, and we're going to kind of suspend our judgment about it and at least listen to it and see if there's something there that we could identify having some theological significance for those of us who are listening. The covenant might be to listen to some classical music and discover more what it means. It might be listening to some more contemporary sacred music, or corritos, those little songs that I learned from my Hispanic community friends. Just the little songs, the somos unos, and other songs like that. So the covenant is about, one, connecting with people, and you make a commitment to listen to music. And the covenant might also include listening to a particular kind of music, something outside either of your comfort level or something that you typically don't listen to. And then to have some conversation about what is it that we heard, and how might it connect us to the sacred. Another way of connecting with others is to attend a concert, and process what you hear, or what you've heard, in order to, again, look for meaning in terms of your experience with God and the sacred, and experience with one another. Uh, I used to live on the East Coast, and Sweet Honey and the Rock would come to Boston every year, and there was a group of friends of mine that we would go, and we would go to attend a Sweet Honey in the Rock concert every year. And often there was at least one or two new songs that they would introduce. And while we would kind of unpack the old familiar songs, we almost always had a new song always also to unpack. Well, it was a way for us to uh, um, uh, have that experience together, and to listen to what that experience meant for each one of us, and particularly in the ways in which it increased our spiritual connection to God and to one another. And sometimes the music became a vehicle for us to share with one another, even though we were close friends, share with one another something that we had not shared previously. So connecting with others by attending concert, listening to the music, and sharing that experience beyond the concert. Another way of connecting with others is to start an a cappella singing group. Now, some people really like to have either that piano or that drum beat or that guitar or something to underneath them as they're doing their singing. But again, another thing I really love about Sweet Honey and the Rock, I'm using them as an example a lot, but one of the things I really love about them is that they are an a cappella group. And in order for them to do what they do, they must, as I've said earlier, listen to one another. And so, so starting an a cappella singing group is one way to really listen to one another and get to that harmony, that gives that fills out the music for you. Now, I sing a lot of Sweet Honey and the Rock songs, but there's nothing like having another voice or two or three join me and sing those different harmonies, sing those different parts of the song. And it has a whole new meaning when other voices join me, and when it's done a cappella. Again, in addition to their voices, the Sweet Honey uses percussions, whether it's a drum, or a tambourine, so it's not that they don't use some other things, but it is a way of also being able to listen to each other's voice. And you're right, Virginia. A cappella singing takes a lot of practice. Uh, but if you do it in a way, excuse me, if you do it in a way in which you say, okay, we're not looking for perfection, but what we're looking for is to really listen to one another. And maybe that's where the challenge comes, is listening to one another and adding one's voice to another's voice to create something, a harmony or something new together. Another way of connecting with others is to actually go beneath the surface of a piece of music. Um, um, in theomusicology, one of the things that you do is that you take a particular piece of music, you listen to it, you can identify where you see the sacred in that music, but then also you pull back the layers of the music. And there may be something in the notes of the music, in the harmony of the music, in the words of the music. You might even go into who wrote the lyrics or the tune and what was happening around them in their life when they wrote that particular song. Another body of music that I love to just examine and unpack are Negro spirituals. Because when I think about the antebellum South, and the music that the people sang, and I really do think they needed to sing in order to survive slavery. Oh, so I'm like, okay, well, I know that they're being held against their will. I know that they are working hard, have horrible working conditions. I know, but there's a lot of really rich spiritual, deeply spiritual music that comes out of the Negro spirituals, and you wonder, what was it inside of them that enabled them to praise God regardless of what was happening? And so sometimes listening to the spirituals can just kind of lift our own spirits, but it often makes me wonder, how did they do that? And so there are a number of groups of spirituals that are related to certain areas in the country or in around islands, and you wonder what was happening in that particular context when that particular song came to be. And because it was an oral tradition, then the songs moved from one place to the next. And when it moved to a new place, something unique about what was happening in that new place often got interjected into the song, whether it was the words or a little twist in the tune and the way the song was sung. But that's an example of kind of going beneath the surface. I mean, if we did that with any of our hymns in our hymnal, or some of the more classical pieces that we sing in our choirs, what's really happening here? And sometimes that kind of going beneath the surface, it really enhances how we sing and how we represent the music that we are listening to. And so even in us being lifted up by that, just imagine what the people in the congregation, how they too are being uplifted when you are able to express the music out of your deep connection or an experience with God. Before we get to that last slide, I'm going to stop a moment and ask you to share a little bit about some of your musical experiences. What are you doing in your congregations? Are there some things? That's one question. Are there some things you wish you could do that you haven't done yet in your congregation? So what I want to invite us to imagine just for a moment um, how we might go beyond where we already are in terms of our musical experience, and with the idea of it being a spiritual practice.
I love that. While people are chiming in, we'll give everyone a minute to type. And you guys are a good group. There's been really good responses here. So
Yeah, yeah, this is great. This is great. Yeah.
The at camp, I've been at senior high camp on and off over the past few years. There's often a workshop, and the whole workshop is the youth will choose their favorite song or a meaningful song, and we'll play it on YouTube, and then just talk about it. And it's like they so seriously, they love it, and it gets to express some of who they are. So when you were saying, all music is sacred, that just strikes a really deep chord with me, because all music is different and it's all sacred to someone. Great. I have a feeling people are writing in.
Okay.
Long. Yeah, it works really, really well for a camp workshop, Rebecca. And the more quiet the leader is, the better it seems to go. When it's done by a really introverted person, that workshop really soars in sales. I don't lead it. I'm not introverted enough. And while I'm going to go ahead, Belva, and post the link to your summer.
Okay, sure.
Course at Willamette too, so people will just have that and talk about it in a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, if you're typing, go ahead and do that, and Katie's going to post the link. And let me just say about this, the workshop that I'm going to do in at Willamette University in Salem, Oregon, June 19 and 20. It's a day and a half workshop. Is that we're going to look at theomusicology more in depth, and we're going to look at a number of Sweet Honey in the Rock songs, and there'll be other songs too. Another important piece about theomusicology, in addition to starting with the idea that there is something theological about all music and there's something sacred about all music, it also is this multi-generation, discipline way of examining music that wants to get at what about the music is healing. How does the music cause an individual to find healing, or a community to find healing? So it's going to be an interesting workshop. It'll be the first time that I've done this particular one, but to have a day and a half just to be with a group of people in which we can do some singing and some listening to music and some unpacking, and to talk about theomusicology and ways in which we might use it in our communities will be great. So I see some of you have written some responses here. Excuse me a second. I'm gonna. Okay. So let's see, Wesley, you say we use a lot of new hymn texts that relate to the lectionary and social issues. In light of the chalice hymnal not being printed anymore, I feel this is the future of hymnody and congregational song. Yeah, and so if some of you are in places where you want to have an opportunity to buy chalice hymnal one more time, I think they're going to do one more printing based on orders that they get at Chalice Press, and have them hopefully available around General Assembly time or shortly thereafter. But yeah, it's and it's not just Chalice hymnal that's not being printed on a regular basis. Some of the other denominations are having the same kind of issues. And Cynthia, you say, I'm working on a women's workshop for this fall, and the theme is a worshipful life. Oh, I like that. And I'm looking for songs to use in the workshop that the women could sing together. Ah, okay. I'm going to think a little bit about that, and I'll get your, and there'll be others in this group who may want to send Cynthia some ideas, but but I'll also think about that and figure out through Katie how to share some songs with you. Okay,
Yes, absolutely.
great. Um,
And Bella, one of the I saw that came
yeah.
up that was a challenge for people. I wonder if you might have a suggestion. Is that that people who sing with their choir, but sometimes the choir is kind of a social group, kind of a chatty group, which is a lot of church choirs are. So it's hard sometimes to feel the spirituality.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Um, so Sandhya Jai is a good friend of mine. Some of you may know her in our disciple circles. And one of the things I love about Shonda is that she does all these workshops on community development and on, she's written this book, Room at the Table, and a number of other books. But when she does a live workshop, the way she calls the group to attention is to sing a song. And then people quieten down, and then they are able to turn their focus to her as a workshop leader. I've done that when I've been in a room full of people. I think Katie, you may have been there. No, this was just at our DSF graduation party, and for our graduates, and there, I mean, the room was full of people. And so, rather than me say, "May I have your attention, please?" I just started singing "Amazing Grace," and one person heard me, and then another heard me, and then another heard me, and everybody joined in. So it might be that even in a choir that gets together and it's really chatty, that to set a expectation is that when you hear the choir director or leader start with a song, that is our signal to focus and to come together and to begin that worshipful work. I mean, a few years ago there was this book on worshipful work that church boards and began using uh, um, as a way of understanding that what for some is kind of a tedious part of being a part of a church board as worshipful work. So even in a choir, if we think about the what happens in the choir and at choir rehearsal as our worshipful work, and it really is about kind of shifting our mindset about that. I mean, and you might build into the choir rehearsal time either chatting time in the beginning or chatty time in the end, but somewhere in there bring home the point of what we do is worshipful work, and that we are called to lead congregations, the congregation in its singing and in its music for when we all gather for worship. It's just one idea. I see there are a number of other comments there. And I think
Um,
everybody can see the comments. Yes, Katie, you want to say something?
so yeah, the comments are so good, and so I'll actually attach a lot of these to an email that I send out just as a follow up because so many of you have great suggestions.
Okay.
But there's one other challenge that came up, and I wonder, Belva, if you have a moment to respond to it, which is that when, like, when a congregant feels like they're in a rut, and the musicians only want to use printed music, and then it feels like it kind of stifles congregational singing. Do you have any little tips for engaging in some of that? I wonder if like using the work club idea, like a covenant group, might be a way to introduce new songs.
Yeah. Well, I think some of us are familiar. Looks like a lot of us are familiar with either the disciple hymnal or the UCC hymnal or whatever our denominational hymnal or whatever hymnal our congregation chooses to use. And so one way to get out of the rut is to go beyond those 20 hymns that we sing, because oftentimes we will use the hymnal, but there's probably out of all of the songs in the hymnal, there are probably maybe 30 or maybe 40 that we sing all the time. And one way to get out of the rut is to go to a song that nobody knows and learn it. Uh, Another way might be to pick up the hymnal of another denomination or one of the kind of specialty hymnals that some denominations have, that to go to some of the songs that we don't typically sing. So part of it may just to, again, this is my point about basically we have everything we need right at our fingertips. Go to your chalice hymnal or whatever the hymnal you are, and find a song you've never sung before in the congregation, and use that to kind of get you out of your rut. Um, um, that might be a way to do that, and I'm sure that there are other suggestions, but that clearly might be one. Let's see. So I'm just going to skip us through these last few. We've kind of talked about some of these last few um, um, slides. Next steps for moving forward in your congregation. We've just had some of that conversation about how to get out of your rut, how to pick songs we've never sung before, and some other ways of moving forward with our congregation, and the ways in which we engage in music together. Um, and again, I want to emphasize strongly that actually we have everything we need, and maybe this is the group that's on this webinar can be a group that can exchange some ideas with one another. What are you doing in one place that might be easily done in another place? I see a lot of really good comments, and I'm going to be really interested to read through some of these after the webinar is done. And so, I think there are a lot of opportunities beyond what we have talked about and have done today. And so, Katie, can you say a little bit more about how we might stay connected, or how at least we might communicate with I might be able to communicate with this group, or the group might be able to communicate with each other, if that's possible?
Yes, absolutely. And I will be sending out a few emails today and tomorrow as well. So if you can't capture everything down right now, that's okay. So
Okay.
what I'm going to do is publish something right now, and this is really a sign up list. So DSF Discover, we do have these opportunities that we offer, these free 1-hour trainings, and we also have opportunities to go deeper. Belva, as you know, is very busy because you saw the things I named that she does. She is also the moderator elect for about another minute for the Christian Church Disciples of Christ. And so she is busy moderating us as well, doing many other things. But we do want to explore the idea of having a class. So if you click on the offer that I posted, this will simply, it doesn't commit you, but it signs you up. And just based on the strength of the comments here and the interaction and the very varied places of music where people are in their congregations, I can already tell if it's all of you, it would be a really, really fun experience. So we're gathering information right now to see if that's something that we want to offer. If there's enough interest, we'll set a date according to Belva's calendar and engage in that. And those usually operate for about 5 nights, about an hour a night, and we have a variety of ways that we do that. So we would love to know if that's of interest to you. Just click the button, it'll just ask for your name and email address. And then I'll send out some follow-up emails, and you can always contact me directly. My email is kvalentine@dsf.edu. And you'll know that from emails that you receive. And great question about CEUs. We do offer CEUs. If they're approved by your accrediting agency, then we'll give you whatever paperwork you need. So yes, for these webinars and then for courses as well.
Okay. I'd like for us to then end our time together by singing, "Lord, I want to be a Christian," and "Lord, I want to be more loving," as we sing our way out of this time together. I want to thank you all so much for signing in and spending this hour with me and with each other. Lord, I want to be a Christian. in my heart, in my heart. Lord, I want to be a Christian in my heart, in my heart, in my heart. Lord, I want to be a Christian in my heart. Lord, I want. Thank you all again for being with us this evening.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for being here, being present, for giving yourself the gift of this hour. Thank you, Belva, for leading us through this.
Thank you.
I can't wait to learn more about theomusicology. I'm looking forward to it.
Great. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and click end of the record.